APM, American Public Media.
The Jesse Ball DuPont Fund reminds you that Giving Tuesday is December 3rd. Join this worldwide movement by giving time, money, or your voice to the nonprofits you love. More at DuPontFund.org/GivingTuesday. Let's give, Jacksonville. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schendler. On today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. An increase in garbage fees is controversial and long overdue. A Baker County Immigrant Detention Center is the subject of a troubling whistleblower complaint. Duval's sex education policies could change under a newly constituted school board. Cumberland Island's horses are in crisis despite calls for the state to act. And a north side tire fire generates days of chemical pollution. We'll talk about all that with our panel of journalists. Later, an annual Thanksgiving 5K to benefit brain health. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect to WJCT.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. President-elect Donald Trump has named former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi as his nominee to be the next U.S. Attorney General. This comes after former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz withdrew his name yesterday. Gaetz has been investigated by the House Ethics Committee on allegations he had sex with an underage girl and for allegations of sex trafficking. Gaetz has denied the allegations. It's not clear if the Ethics Committee's report on its investigation of Gaetz will ever be released. Maryland Democratic Congressman Glenn Ivey, an Ethics Committee member, doesn't know either.
Whether the committee decides to release the materials or not, remains to be seen. I don't know what the decision would be on that front. We'd have to wait until the next meeting. The
next meeting of the House Ethics Committee is supposed to be December 5th. Some of the nation's largest retailers are warning of potential price increases when the new administration takes over next year. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports President-elect Trump is proposing sweeping new tariffs that could affect the cost of almost everything, from construction materials to groceries.
Jonathan Gold is the Vice President of Supply Chain and Customs Policy at the National Retail Federation. He says if Trump goes forward with the proposed tariffs, consumers can expect to pay more.
The impact to products such as apparel, footwear, furniture, home appliances, toys, and travel goods would be pretty significant. Consumers would lose about $46 to $78 billion worth of spending power as prices on those products would increase.
During his first term in office, Trump imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. This time around, he's proposing even more, 60% or more on China, while up to 20% on other countries. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Pennsylvania incumbent Democratic Senator Bob Casey has conceded defeat to Republican rival David McCormick. There were only about 16,000 votes separating them. Russian leader Vladimir Putin says his country has the right to retaliate against NATO countries that arm Ukraine. As NPR's Greg Myrie reports, Putin has been ramping up threats against Ukraine and the West in a series of recent moves.
Putin spoke on television after Russia fired an experimental ballistic missile into Ukraine, one that had not been used previously in the war. The Russian leader said this was a direct response to Ukrainian attacks earlier this week. That's when Ukraine fired American and British missiles into Russia for the first time. In a pointed warning to Ukraine's supporters, Putin said Russia is within its rights to hit the Western countries that supply those weapons. All this comes just days after Putin lowered the threshold for Russia to use nuclear weapons. He said they could now be employed if the country is facing a, quote, critical threat. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning, I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Florida's only glass bottle manufacturing plant that's in northwest Jacksonville will be closing down after operating for almost a century. Anchor Glass Container Corporation's facility on Huron Street was established back in 1926. News partner News4Jax reports the facility will shut down sometime in February next year, taking 144 jobs with it. The glass bottle making facility is one of 6 across the U.S. Saying he is aligned with the position of law enforcement officials, new Florida Senate President Ben Albritton has expressed opposition to allowing people to openly carry firearms in Florida. Second Amendment groups have long sought an open carry law, but the legislature has never passed a bill. Albritton doesn't expect this year to be any different.
Senators, they file bills all the time about various issues. If a bill gets filed that deals with that, then we'll take a close look at it, see what the implications are. But at the end of the day, it's due real caution.
Currently, Floridians can carry concealed weapons, but lawmakers have stopped short of allowing openly carrying firearms. Florida's 2025 legislative session starts in March. Today in Jacksonville, we're going to have cooler temperatures. We'll have highs in the lower 60s closer to the coast and upper 50s inland with sunny skies. No rain is in the forecast. Bonfire weather tonight with clear skies and lows in the upper 30s to lower 40s, and this weekend looks to be sunny and cool.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Americans United for Separation of Church and State. For more than 75 years, AU has supported freedom without favor and equality without exception. Learn more at au.org/NPR.
Of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, trash talk in City Hall over a proposed garbage fee increase, growing calls to close a local ICE detention facility after complaints of abuse, a newly constituted school board makes a rightward turn, a judge dismisses a lawsuit hoping to save Cumberland's beleaguered horses, and a 3-day tire fire lights up the north side. To talk about it all, I'm joined by Riley Phillips, anchor and reporter at First Coast News. Welcome, Riley.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good to have you back. Trisha Booker, author, former reporter and journalism professor at the University of North Florida. Good morning, Trisha.
Good morning, Ann.
Will Brown, race, poverty, and inequality reporter at Jacksonville Today. Hi, Will.
Good morning, Ann.
And via video, we're joined by Nate Monroe, statewide columnist for the USA Today network in Florida. Hey, Nate.
Good morning, Ann.
So we're going to start with a proposed hike to the city's garbage fees. Jacksonville currently charges about $150 per household for solid waste removal. That would have to double to $300 if the city wanted to cover the true cost of the service. City Councilmember Matt Carlucci believes it's time to start charging what it actually costs to collect garbage, and he joins us now by phone. Matt Carlucci, good morning. How has the cost of garbage removal and the fees charged to residents gotten so out of whack?
Well, the city under John Payton was caught in a time when the then Governor Charlie Crist he ran on the promise of lowering property taxes and property insurance costs. And it passed by a referendum he put together for local governments to cut their millage by 2 mills. So Mayor Payton had to come up with a way to find some revenue streams to help us, keep meeting our other obligations of essential city services. So he decided to do a garbage fee and a stormwater fee, which I thought it took real courage for him to do that, and I thought it was the right thing to do. I wasn't on the council at the time, but I did go out on his town meetings and help him any way I could.
So that's how the fee was created, but how did we get to a point where we're not actually able to pay for this service with the fee?
The fee hasn't been changed for 14 years.
Okay, short answer. So it hasn't been changed in 14 years. You tried 4 years ago without success to kind of remedy this, and that was soundly defeated.
Yes, I did.
Costs have continued to go up.
Yes, they have continued to go up. Haulers' rates fees are going up because they're having to pay their drivers more money, and so with the increased cost of a garbage pickup and collection, and the fact that the fee has not been raised for 14 years. I'd love to go buy my car at a 14-year ago rate. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking it would be less, but at any rate, so what happens is if our rate is not sufficient to cover the entire cost, then we have to take money from our general fund, and that turns into a loan, which has been agreed upon by interlocal agreement with the beaches, because they pay their garbage fee and they pay the full cost, but they're paying into the general fund as well of the city.
They have their own garbage service. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I want to ask you,
with
what are your goals undertaking this once again to try to raise the fee? What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, there's 3 things I want to accomplish, and 2 I think I've got a good handle on. But one is setting the rate on the fee, and it's a 2 ordinance process. You have an ordinance that tells the city of Jacksonville and puts everybody on notice that we're going to be studying what the fee should be, and it talks about a public hearing and so forth. If that bill passes, then the second ordinance would be, well, this is what the fee is set at, and then we take it public, and if we take it public, and then we can build some consensus on it.
Are you talking about like putting it to the vote? Are you talking about putting it to the voters when you say take it public?
No, ma'am. This is when council members have to live up to the job they were sworn to uphold.
Sure, but you're saying that you would have to actually pass an ordinance to even convene a discussion of this before you could discuss it.
Well, we can discuss it, and I've already had one sunshine meeting. That's what I call, when I invite my colleagues and it's a notice meeting. We had that 2 weeks ago or so, and I listened to what they had to say, and I took back to the auditors and our general counsel some of their feedback. Matter of fact, they were at the meeting, and so I've been meeting with the general counsel and the auditors on and off since then. And we met yesterday, and I think we've got the first ordinance. We know pretty much what that's going to look like, but the second ordinance is the one that actually, if it passes council, it actually executes the fee increase.
Gotcha. I want to bring in Nate Monroe. Nate, you've covered this issue probably more than any other single person, and honestly, have probably done more to light a fire under city officials. Why are lawmakers seemingly so reluctant to touch this issue?
There's an interesting history with the idea of a trash fee in Jacksonville politics. When Tommy Hazouri failed to win re-election as mayor, there are people who credit that failure to a new garbage fee that he was pushing at the time, and I think there is this sort of lingering bad memory about that over an issue like this. But I also think it just kind of stems from this kind of Jacksonville mindset that we can do everything on the cheap. There are exceptions to this, Council Member Carlucci being one, but by and large, a lot of these city politicians just are terrified of asking residents to pay more money for the services that they get. The important thing to keep in mind here too is that, this is a user fee. It's not a tax. This isn't tax money that goes into a general fund and then it gets, maybe spent on stuff. Some of it you like, some of it you don't. This is the cost that you're paying for someone to pick up trash at your house and bring it out to the landfill and, outside of Baldwin. That is what you're paying. And so it really should be fairly straightforward. It's remarkable that, as Matt noted, this fee has not gone up since like Barack Obama's first term in office, which is crazy. Like, what costs the same as what it did in 2010? Nothing does. Nobody should expect that it would. This really should not be a difficult conversation to have with voters and with homeowners, and yet for some reason it's just the Jacksonville way. It's way more complicated than it should be.
This issue was taken up. I mean, as you've reported, the city council auditor has flagged this every year as a problem, and a growing problem. And in 2022, the city council had a committee. They convened, they discussed this and recommended more evaluation. But then nothing ever happened with that. And I guess, again, because this is like a bit of a third rail for lawmakers, and there already has been some pushback, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, there always will be. I mean, nobody wants to pay more money for stuff. It's a huge bummer, but that's also just kind of the way the world works. The beaches pay a higher fee. The beaches pay like 18 something for their trash fee, and they have not those communities have not fallen into the sea. I mean, it's not something that's impossible. There are communities all around Florida and the United States that pay trash fees. And by and large, the vast majority of them are more than the $12 and change that Jacksonville residents pay. Jacksonville residents have been getting a great deal for the last 14 years. So, I mean, it should not be that difficult. And what is compounding the problem is that the council is very reluctant to tell waste haulers no when they come to the council asking for more money to haul this trash away. And so what you're seeing over time is the cost of picking up this trash is going way, way higher. But we're doing nothing to rectify, to kind of close the gap between what people are actually paying for the service and what it's actually costing the city. And so it's just exacerbating the problem. And every year that they fail to adjust the fee, it's going to be harder in the future to adjust the fee.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to, drop a huge shock bill on residents all at once.
Tricia, I mean, I'm kind of a firm believer that people who haul waste should probably be getting some of the highest wages as opposed to the lowest wages. But they did just recently get a big increase. And that was because during COVID, they couldn't find people to do the job. There was trash piling up. You'll remember, there was even a story in the New York Times about the biggest city in Florida can't pick up its garbage. It was an embarrassment.
Yeah, and this seems to me that, again, 14 years we've gone without an increase. And I understand that we want to do things on the cheap, but it seems to me that if we had been doing incremental increases all along, this wouldn't be an issue. I don't know why the council would be so reluctant to do these small increases year by year that residents probably really wouldn't even notice. And I'm kind of struck by what Mr. Carlucci said, that, yeah, the council is terrified to raise any kind of taxes or any kind of fee on residents, minimal though it may be. Even if it had not kept up with the cost of the trash, we certainly wouldn't be in the multi-million-dollar hole that we are in now.
Yeah. We're talking about the week's biggest stories with our panel of journalists. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. I want to take a call from Brenda on the west side. Good morning, Brenda. Go ahead.
Good morning. I would like to say that I absolutely support this. I have no problem paying for an increase because, one, it's well-deserved, and I think that the city workers who pick up our trash should be earning a fair wage, and I don't have a problem with the increase.
Thank you, Brenda, for that input. Councilman Carlucci, there are some people that, like Brenda, are going to support this, but it is a significant increase to look at straight up doubling the current amount. What, if anything, would you put into place to help either ease this in or protect people who just simply can't afford to pay that increase?
Well, let me go back to what Nate said on other cities. One of the cities at the beach is paying $36 a month, so that'll tell you something right there.
As opposed to, I mean,
and-
break it down for us so that we know the comparison.
Well, they're paying way over half of what we're paying. They're paying what we're paying times 2.2 or something like that, I
Gotcha.
guess.
Okay.
So, and I just wanted to point that out because that's a local thing. Nate was hitting on all the right subjects. I just wanted to give a local example. The other bill that I intend to introduce, and I've gone over this with the General Counsel, the Council auditors, and everything I've done, I have leaned heavily on the auditors and the General Counsel. One would be a fund that would be probably funded by the general fund with perhaps $1 million in there. It's a similar fund that they have for the stormwater fee for people who need a little relief on that because of their income, and they can apply and they can receive some assistance. And I would make that bill because it's paid for with ad valorem taxes. That means the beaches in Baldwin pay us as well. So I would make that bill of a relief, of help and assistance. Everybody in Jacksonville, the beaches, Baldwin, and the rest of the city of Jacksonville would be eligible to apply. And because I think we've got to have something in place. My concern about if we just do this, like, let's say that we increase the fee, instead of $25 or $26 a month to $20 a month, and that would stop the bleeding a bit, but the loan would still grow. But the problem I see with that is you got to get the council to once again increase the garbage fee, and and
same problem.
I just think we need to. I feel somewhat of a personal responsibility because I tried to get this done in 2020, and I guess I just wasn't a good enough salesperson.
I want to take a call from Tom at NAS Jax. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. It seems to me as if all these proponents of raising fees are quite out of touch with reality. My homeowner's insurance is almost $4,000 a year. My property taxes, granted, not that much, but they certainly add to it. Mortgage rates are going higher and higher as we speak. And now someone wants to increase a user fee? I don't really care how much they're paying at the beach. That's their problem. I live in Jacksonville. We're talking about Jacksonville. I don't care about the municipalities. I care about Jacksonville. And if this is a user fee, Mr. Carlucci, then I have the opportunity to decline to pay that fee and to participate. If I don't want to pay the user fee at Hanna Park, I don't go. If I don't want to pay the user fee for your trash collection, I don't pay it. I'll take the stuff to the dump myself. What in the world is going to make you people finally understand what other people are dealing with? You just want to increase prices because you can afford it. God bless you. You pay it. The rest of us, we're struggling out here. You don't even understand it.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Carlucci, I'm guessing that's kind of something along the lines of what you and your colleagues can expect to hear as this moves forward.
I'm sure it will be, and I can understand his outrage, so to speak, but that doesn't erase the fact that this is a real problem in local government, and it has to be solved in some form or fashion. I'm putting out a way to solve it. And by the way, I can afford it. That's true. But I have friends and family who are going to struggle to have to pay it. I do live in the real world. I'm sitting at my insurance desk today, and I will be today's Friday, and I'll be working all day long. So I work hard. I am in touch with reality, but I'm also in touch with the reality of fulfilling my obligation to make sure we keep our city sound. And if the loan at the end of this fiscal year will be up to $93 million. And if we don't do anything, by the end of the next fiscal year, it might be $130 million. We don't know, but it's going to be high. how are we going to fix it? Some people may say do away with the fee and just let the general fund pay it. And I think I don't think that's a good idea. It could be done, but
well, why not? I mean,
think
there are
people
who are saying, like, instead of a fee, why shouldn't this be rolled into a general service that the city provides, like police or fire, and that way you wouldn't have to worry about these incremental increases. People would just be paying the tax that they pay, and you'd pay for the service out of that.
Well, it's very adaptable to a user fee, which makes it fee friendly. Number one. Number two, a fee cannot be fiddled with by the Florida legislature or the governor. And that's why Mayor Payton introduced the fee, because he got hit with a $2 million increase by a referendum that then Charlie Crist, governor, put on the ballot, and everybody voted for it, of course. So every city was like stuck with trying to make up the difference. And so the idea was we'll do the stormwater fee and the garbage fee because those would be two revenue streams that the governor and the state can't mess with. So they would be permanent, reliable income streams. And also, I think, in my opinion, that it helps the taxpayer know what the price that they're paying for garbage is, and if it gets too high, they can demand that we go out to bid on our servicing districts in the haulers. So that's why I support the fee. But and if we did not have the garbage fee, we would lose about a $40-some-odd million income stream in next year's budget, and it already looks like the budget's going to be some $100 million shy of.
Yeah.
So, if we want a great city, we got to do things the right way, and I just believe that. And I did this before I ran for re-election last time, and I had some of the same calls as the nice gentleman before us. But this time around, I tell you, I got to tell you, I'm finding a lot more support from the average taxpayer out there than I did back in 2020. There are a lot of people that agree with this.
Well, we will continue to follow it. Councilmember Matt Carlucci, thanks so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. And we're going to move on now to some other topics with our panel of journalists. I want to talk about a story that you've been covering, Riley. This is a Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention facility known as an ICE facility in Baker County. It's been getting some renewed negative attention. Bring us up to speed on what has been happening in the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months.
So last week, 2 new documents dropped, a new ACLU civil rights complaint filed on behalf of this woman who spent several months in the ICE detention facility. She claims that she was mistreated, harassed, unjustly put in solitary confinement. And then a whistleblower disclosure also was released. The whistleblower is a former nurse practitioner at the detention facility, and she detailed the same thing, that she witnessed neglect, harassment, staff members falsifying medical records. So that came to light last week. And then on Monday, Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost, who represents the 10th Congressional District, he got on social media, this live stream, and basically is now calling for this detention facility to be shut down. And he wants to get it done while there's kind of this lame duck session in Congress before the next administration starts, because we kind of really don't know what's going to happen when President Trump takes office.
And we should say that, the contract that Baker County gets from the Department of Homeland Security to run this facility is a significant amount of money. I mean, they run their county jail out of part of it, and then this detention facility out of the other part. So the ACLU, this congressman calling for a shutdown of the facility, I imagine that would take a lot of political will on the part of people. And, certainly the sheriff would strongly oppose that. What has he said so far?
So they are not commenting. The sheriff's office has not really commented on this situation in the last year because it's, there's a pending lawsuit. But in 2022, he did sit down with News4Jax and kind of refuted the initial complaint that was filed, the federal complaint back in 2022. 16 civil rights groups got together and filed a complaint against the Baker County Detention Center. And so that was kind of not the first time that allegations have been made, but, the first time that it really made noise. And, he refuted a lot of those claims, and News4Jax was able to actually get inside the detention facility and get video. But since then, they've remained no comment on pending litigation.
And you also found an inspector general report that kind of addressed some of those concerns that were raised in that lawsuit, the civil rights claims a few years ago.
Yes, the Inspector General's office for the Department of Homeland Security did an unannounced visit back in January. The findings were released in September, and they did find things like, the staff were not providing the ICE detention handbooks, and there's, multiple languages that people can read through and know their rights and know what to expect. They were not handing those out. There was issues with use of force, issues with the staff members not really writing down the complaints or requests of detainees. According to the report, though, those issues have been remedied. So, that's what they're saying.
Yeah. Will Brown, increased focus, I guess, on these facilities at this point, perhaps merited because, under the second Trump administration, he has promised to do mass deportations. Presumably, detention facilities like this one in Baker County would be utilized in organizing whoever's going to be deported before they actually are deported.
Correct. And the thing that Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost mentioned was that this is not a humane way to treat people, regardless of what one thinks about the status of people who are in the country illegally or perhaps in the country legally and being deported from this country. Frost's point is that what is taking place at the Baker County ICE facility is not a humane way to treat people. I read that Inspector General's report yesterday, and the thing that just stood out to me was that folks did not comply with use of force standards. Whether someone's detained or not, you should still be able to house and detain someone humanely and use force when necessary and appropriate and have documentation for when that force is used. Riley mentioned that there were 5 suggestions, and the 2 suggestions that really stood out, they've said that they've, adhered to all of them, but implement internal controls that ensure that timely and appropriate responses to detainee request processes. People still have rights while they're being detained.
Right. And Tricia, a lot of people think of people who are in ICE detention as criminals, but in fact, that is not a criminal charge if you're in the country without proper authorization or if you've overstayed a visa. That's a civil offense. Some people are detained while those court proceedings are going through, but the people in this detention facility may, in fact, just be, people who have overstayed a visa. And I think most people would believe that, that the standard should be somewhat different.
Well, sure. Most of them, their main crime has been trying to escape poverty and violence in their country of birth, and we now are holding them in a place that is rife with poverty and violence. Some of the things that I read, particularly the claims of the woman that you referred to who was put in solitary confinement, it's ghastly. It really is awful, the things that have happened to some of the people there. And yeah, they
are alleged to have happened.
Or alleged to have happened. Yes, I'm sorry. Alleged to have happened there. But it does seem like most people agree that there have been some violations of what should be considered standard care for people who are being held for really just trying to get a better life. I know someone who was held there for 4 months, I believe. He had 3 children. He and his wife had both come here as very young teenagers. They have 3 children who were American born, and he got stopped because his tail light was out when he was going to Walmart one night, and he was held for 4 months. And there's the way that this affects families is also something that I think needs to be considered.
I just want to catch up on a couple of emails related to our first topic because I think it's worth mentioning. We got an email from Jay saying, not for nothing, but why can't the Jaguars kick in for the garbage fees? Ricardo emailed, hard to ask for raising fees after giving the Jags $1 billion for a stadium, not to mention all the downtown development largesse. And Mike emailed, what's the difference in the city funding the stadium and finding the funding the garbage service? Nate Monroe, that's also an issue you've covered a great deal. And there are going to be people who see a great disparity between the billions of dollars that, ultimately are going to be spent on building the stadium, split between the city and the Jaguars, and this $300 annually that residents could soon be charged for garbage.
Sure. I mean, I'm not unsympathetic to people who are concerned about the ways, the perhaps foolish ways that the city spends its money, particularly on downtown and particularly on downtown developers. Like, I get it. Again, though, this is a user fee. The dyspeptic caller who wished for a way he could haul the trash himself, like, I support that. I totally wish we could offer people an opt-out. If you want to go drive your trash once or twice a week, into the deep West Side and beyond, to take it to the landfill yourself, like, have at it. But it's a user fee. This is the cost that this should represent, the cost to pick this trash up. Rolling that amount into the general fund is sort of dishonest. All that's going to do is reduce the amount of city services that the city can provide, because it's now, it would then be also financing trash pickup with property taxes that have not been raised in the last two mayoral administrations. And so, again, I get it. Everything costs more. If you're mad about your property insurance costing more, you should be writing the governor and your state legislators for failing to fix that. That's not a city problem. At the end of the day, I think most of us are just adults who understand that when things go up, when the cost of things go up, you just kind of have to pay for it if that's what you want. I mean, I don't know any other way to explain it.
All right. I want to move on now to a topic of the Duval County School Board. Tricia, this new school board members, 3 of them sworn in this week, signaling a real shift to the right on the part of the school board. 5 of the 7 members endorsed by Moms for Liberty, 4 endorsed by the governor, Ron DeSantis, all of them saying that they, have basically a mandate given the recent elections to fulfill what they believe is the community's will. Some of that could include changes to sex education policies.
Absolutely. It occurred to me, I don't know if it's ironic or coincidental, but 2 weeks after we were we failed to pass an amendment to make school boards partisan, we have a decidedly partisan school board. I think change is coming. Even the first meeting was very contentious with a lot of sniping back and forth. They do feel like they have a mandate. And I think that we're going to see some changes that are going to be pretty drastic to a lot of schools. Sex education and book banning, and a lot of this is referred to as parent choice. But I really also think it takes away a lot of parent choice as well.
Right. We should say the superintendent, Chris Bernier, is also endorsed by Moms for Liberty. They've been very enthusiastic about him taking over. And this report was released on him. Riley, that found that, he'd been accused of a racial bias in his previous district. This report found he was not exhibiting racial bias, but they did find that he was a pretty unpleasant boss, according to all accounts.
Yes, that he, excuse me, still used unfavorable language, found that he spoke about and appeared to regard some women less favorably than men. While race wasn't a factor in his mistreatment, it still, found that mistreatment. He's still mistreated some employees.
An equal opportunity bully, it sounds like.
Will.
I mean, I sometimes think of that George Orwell line from Animal Farm, which I think is still allowed to be read in schools. Everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. It is fascinating to follow this school board. And yes, I am a reporter, but I make absolutely no hiding of it that I am a Duval County public school parent. And so when I look at this school board, I look at being a Duval County public school parent And there have been times this year that I've had to talk down my fourth grader from wanting to go up to the school board and give them a piece of his mind. And I said, don't do it. It's not worth it. Just talk to us. But, so I think one of the people who commented on Tuesday night when Charlotte Joyce was made the chairman and April Carney was made the vice chairman, during the public comment, she said she believed this board would, quote, care for kids who are LGBTQ. Well, we have one member of the school board who's posted all sorts of memes that could be perceived as hateful toward our LGBTQ community. And
Tony Ricardo.
Yes. And frankly, I spoke with a trans student earlier this calendar year, and he said he didn't always feel safe. He said he didn't always feel protected when it comes to some of the people on the school board. And I remember attending a school board meeting within the last 14 months where this student, since graduated, is at an Ivy League school, would address the school board, and the current chair did not appear to be interested or engaged in what the student had to say while they're speaking at public comment to the school board. So this new chair and this new members of the board, I would challenge them as a parent who happens to get paid to be a reporter to be transparent and present throughout all of Duval County, not just segments of Duval County.
A couple of comments on X, one from Fire Pit Mike. He says religious conservatives indoctrinate their children, and then when schools try to educate the children with real information, conservatives call it indoctrination. All students need access to high-quality, research-based and fact-based sex and sexuality education programming. Also on X, Jags fan Brian says it's a shame that educators are not allowed to use professional judgment in the age and developmentally appropriate evaluation of curriculum. Teenagers aren't elementary children. Opt-out has always existed. We're talking about the week's top stories, and we welcome your comments or questions. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or comment on social media. I want to move on, Tricia, to this topic of Cumberland Island horses. It's a conversation we're going to be having a longer discussion on next week. But basically, a federal judge dismissed a lawsuit that was filed in April of last year, asking the state to address the fact that the horses aren't doing well there.
Yeah, the judge dismissed the case, but he also asked for the Park Service to please.
I think it's a she.
She asked the Park Service to consider the complaints that were being put forth. Horses, of course, are not indigenous to Cumberland Island, but they've been there in wild in some fashion for over 200 years with different sizes of the herd. But the people I spoke with who are familiar with the horses there and the situation there said the island is just not meant to feed and to sustain that big a herd. And there are other places in the United States on the East Coast where horses live wild, but those herds are managed. There's birth control. They feed them. They care for their welfare, and
you're thinking like Assateague Island.
Yeah, correct. And these the horses on Cumberland have no care whatsoever. They are left to fend for themselves, and most of the mayors stay pregnant almost all the time, and there's not a lot of natural food sources for them. So it's not just a matter of the ecological damage that's being done to the island, which is significant, but also there's a tremendous amount of suffering that goes on within the herd. The horses are not doing well.
Yeah, we should say you kind of grew up on a horse, and so you know from horses. I mean, they're a big attraction at Cumberland. People love kind of the beauty and, the fact that they kind of are allowed to run wild there. It does draw people to go to Cumberland Island, but increasingly, the picture of these horses is of borderline starvation. Some of them are very, very skinny, where you can see their hip bones and their rib bones, and it's not maybe as picturesque as it once was.
No, it's not. And a lot of these, the foals and the colts that are born are not healthy and are not able to grow up into healthy horses. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of people advocating for one extreme or another, either no horses or let them run free. It sounds like a lot of horse advocates believe there is a middle ground. There could be a horse herd of maybe 40 to 50 horses that are managed where they could still be an attraction, but there's not the animal suffering that you're seeing now, and you still have it as a picturesque part of the tourism experience there.
And Nate, I think it's interesting. The judge dismissed this case basically saying you don't have a claim because you're kind of saying that the state isn't addressing this environmental damage that's being done, the judge recognizing the state hasn't done anything. So there really isn't an actionable response that the judge can allow, or, that these plaintiffs, these complainants can make. And it's sort of interesting. It's like, well, what is the recourse if the state is in fact not doing anything, and therefore there's no action that can be taken?
It feels like the law, and particularly like environmental law, this kind of thing happens a lot, where a judge will find that, yes, this agency maybe didn't plan this project super well, but they did try to plan it, and that's all they have to do. I feel like that's a kind of common motif in environmental law. And probably born out of our country's long tradition of being very suspicious of regulation.
Yeah. And Will, this is a lawsuit that was filed at the federal level. It's now been dismissed. And there are some expectations that it could be refiled in state court, but in the short term, really no resolution for the people that are advocating for the horses.
Correct. And the horses just are allowed to roam free and hopefully not tear up too much of Cumberland Island.
Yeah. Riley, I want to move on to another topic because you covered it, and it has been a dominant story for people who live in North Jacksonville. It's this tire fire that started Monday night at a recycling facility in North Jacksonville. Tell us what happened there.
Yes, the fire, I believe, started around midnight, Monday night into Tuesday, and it is, as of this morning, it's still burning. Captain Eric Crosswimmer confirmed to me just before the show started that they're still out there. There's still some hot spots, but it was burning really bright throughout the day Tuesday, a lot of smoke in the air. Thursday, they got it under control, manageable. No smoke Wednesday, which was good for people who are concerned about air quality. And then they were hoping to have it completely out Wednesday night, but it's just, Captain Crosswimmer was explaining, it's just such a deep fire because of all the tires that have melted. So they're just trying to find
What are the special challenges of a tire fire versus just a regular fire?
It burns very hot. That rubber burns very hot. And it's almost like all the tires kind of congeal together. So that's why they've had to bring in the heavy equipment, heavy machinery to just dig through the pile to find any areas that might still be on fire or hot.
And not helped by the fact that there's no fire hydrant near that site.
Yes, they had to. Crosswimmer was able to get us closer to the scene on Wednesday, but it was just this long hose that connected to another hose that they had to bring out there.
And they're basically pumping it from nearby apartment complexes and the water used for those homes.
Yes, there's one right before the recycling center, right in the start of the road.
And so, as you say, some of these tires can produce a great deal of toxic smoke. It's a carcinogenic product. I guess no surprise there. There was winds helping disperse it in terms of, there being a something that was kicking off meters or, registering on an air quality meter. But the people who lived there were experiencing a lot of heavy smoke.
Yes. And I think some people were concerned. People with asthma, other respiratory issues were concerned, and they have every right to be. That there was a lot of smoke in the air. But JFRD, they had their hazmat team on scene, and they were testing periodically throughout the day. And they say, according to their readings, everything seemed okay. There was no cause for concern.
Yeah. Will, does an event like this prompt some sort of look back at kind of best practices? Having a water source near a site that could catch fire seems like it would be a fundamental.
It would seem like that, but some things just don't surprise me when it comes to the north side. And what I mean by that is the north side is where power is generated. It's where recycling is taken. But yet it's the part of town where investment in jobs and investment in people is often not commonplace, or investment in infrastructure is not the same as opposed to other areas of town. So the fact that there is not a fire hydrant close enough to a facility that stores hundreds of tires is on brand for Jacksonville.
Nate Monroe, this is a costly operation for JFRD. Is there any chance that the city could recoup some of the enormous expense of fighting this multi-day fire?
That is an interesting question. I am not an attorney, and I'm sure that the city will have its attorneys look at that. I think it would be. I guess my only thought there is, if your house catches on fire, I mean, that's what JFRD is there for, right?
Yeah.
Like I would worry a little bit about a precedent that if something happens through no fault of your own, you might, you could be on the hook for damages.
Right.
But I also don't know if, I don't know enough about this. If these operators are being negligent in some way, there is probably a balance between like accountability and kind of a reasonable precedent that the city needs to think about there.
Nate Monroe, Riley Phillips, Trisha Booker, Will Brown, thank you all so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Up next, a Thanksgiving Day tradition hits a 10-year milestone.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com.
How quieting the mind can elevate mental well-being. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News, 89.9 Jacksonville.
On the next Florida Roundup, tuning out. The election may be over, but the volume of political news remains loud. Presidential cabinet picks, jockeying for next year's legislative session. The votes have long been counted. Have you now tuned out of political news? How will you talk about politics with family and friends visiting over the holidays? Email us, radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
On the next Fresh Air, when art, sex, and politics collided, we talk with Scott Eyman about his book Charlie Chaplin vs. America, about the consequences the movie star and director faced after making his 1940 film The Great Dictator, satirizing Hitler and the authoritarian mindset. Chaplin was eventually forced into exile. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
Matt Gaetz has gone. Trump's embattled nominee for Attorney General withdraws his name from consideration. Will others follow? Also on the Hill, a fight over a bathroom ban. The federal workforce is told to prepare for mass layoffs. And in Dallas, the roof falls in on the Cowboys. More on the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, for some runners, the annual turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning is almost as anticipated as the holiday feast itself. But the UF Health Turkey Trot in Atlantic Beach also has a larger goal, and here to tell us about it is Dr. Ramon Batista, professor and chair of neurology at UF Health Jacksonville. Good morning.
Good morning.
Also, Ashton Kroner, the USMC veteran and associate director of development at UF Health. Good morning, Ashton.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks for being here. So this is the 10th year for the race. Ashton, how has the event changed since its inception over those years?
Oh my gosh. So I am really excited to sit there and say that we are, this is the first time that we're actually going to have 5,000, are projected to have 5,000 runners. It did not start off that way. It started off much, much smaller. So we're really excited to see it grow over the years. We're able to, raise more funds to be able to help expand programming for a lot of different organizations and programs here at UF. So it's just
that must be one of the largest 5Ks around.
This is the largest 5K here in Jacksonville. So
Yeah.
we're really proud to say that now.
And so, Dr. Batista, this is an event that benefits and focuses on traumatic brain injuries in particular. First of all, are traumatic brain injuries, and why do they need, additional funding and attention?
Well, because you come to a situation in your life where you're normal at one time and all of a sudden your life just takes you by the horn, right? And, I was telling Ashton a while, but I had a patient actually I just saw in clinic a couple of weeks ago, young 18, 19-year-old, who actually was at honors student in school, had a really mild head trauma, mild by standards. Not even requiring an ER visit, or at least required, but went home. And then we had personality changes, withdrawn in the room. Their life was just passing them by. And these stories play out over and over again among head trauma patients, even the milder ones, so to speak. So raising awareness for something like this and trying to help them is very important.
What are the most common causes of a traumatic brain injury?
I mean, stands out. I guess car accidents, of course, would be there. I mean, sports-related head trauma, we take it for granted. And thank God that we have so much science right now that have made it actually safer and still interesting to watch. And of course, our veterans, our first responders, of course, are subjected to head trauma all the time.
Yeah. Ashton, I want to ask you about that. I mean, we hear about sports injury and connections to TBI, but there is indeed a lot more attention now on combat and training injuries for veterans and first responders.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to our military now, I mean, we train, like we're in war. It's very real training, and so we're more prone to accidents like that. In fact, a lot of our, what is it, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, TBI is actually the signature injury, of that era. I'm not going to say Gulf War, that's actually post-traumatic stress, but, it comes in a close second. But for those that are, my generation, the signature injury is TBI. And it's because of, we train, like we're going to be fighting.
Yeah, and you're a Marine. I mean, you've experienced some of these real life training scenarios, and there's concern about those blasts that people are doing, in training even before they get to the combat situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have a lot of different simulations that we're doing. I mean, so like when I was, brand new Marine, we're at the grenade range, we're throwing grenades, firing shoulder fired weapons, that vibration goes right up to your head. I mean, there is so many different things that can cause, these symptoms that we're seeing in the veterans that are coming through, coming through these trauma programs. It's very, very, very catastrophic, and in some cases, for some of these training accidents as well.
Yeah, Dr. Batista, I mean, we're learning more about brain injury, these kind of connections that haven't really been explored before at a time when we've been at war for, a long time, for an entire generation in some cases. And so I would imagine that the number of those related TBIs are just skyrocketing.
I mean, definitely. And if you think about it, many of these folks actually live life with a TBI. And many of them, it doesn't come to you like a lightning bolt, head trauma, I'm bleeding, I'm vomiting. It could be the everyday life experiences you have. I can't concentrate, I'm having migraines, I get nauseous, I'm more irritable. These are TBI symptoms for many folks. And what they need is help that actually addresses the root cause of what's going on.
Yeah. And so anyway, TBIs are the focus of the Turkey Trot, this 5K in Atlantic Beach. It's on November 28th. So just tell us where it begins and ends and how people could get involved if they want to.
Yeah, so you can go to our website, the ufhealthjax.org /Turkey Trot. It has all the information on there, but we're actually at One Ocean is where everything is going to be happening. And, we have two different runs. We have the 5K, which for runners that are wanting to qualify for our first ever runner's hat, they have to be there at 7:30 to start. And then we also have a family fun 1 mile run /walk for those that are interested in that as well. But all the information is on our website as well.
All right. Well, Dr. Ramon Batista, Ashton Kroner, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Sure. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
The Jacksonville Symphony and the Jacksonville Symphony Chorus present Handel's Messiah. This holiday tradition, with its message of hope and its majestic composition, brings audiences to their feet season after season. December 14th and 15th. Tickets at jacksymphony.org.